Get going, I think. So, as I said, welcome to this this follow-up webinar, AI and project management, a deeper discussion. I'm going to refer to some of the things we covered off in the first webinar that I did with my friends here at Sharktower, and refer back to some of those sort of key points. But really, this is about what it says on the title there: a deeper discussion around AI and project management. So, I cover the next slide, please. Introductions. I don't know why my picture is bigger than Craig's or Lindsay's, because really this session is all about them and not about me. But in case you don't know who I am, Peter Taylor. I am known as the Lazy Project Manager, and I have a real passion for everything to do with AI and project management. Personally, I think it's just one of the most exciting things happening right now in the world of project management, and we'll explore some of those today, and I'll share some of my thoughts towards the end. But the important people today is Craig and Lindsay. So Craig, why don't you introduce yourself to the group?
I am Craig Mackay. I am a tired old project manager of many decades. I've tried every possible way to deliver projects and failed, and now, along with Lindsay, co-founded Sharktower, and actually we've been developing this product over the last 5 years actually, and we tried to solve project management delivery with a bit of data. So that's my background.
Brilliant. And Lindsay, and no relation whatsoever, we should hastily add.
Yes, no relation, coincidence. Yeah, so I'm the Chief Customer Officer and co-founder, along with Craig, of Sharktower. I've also seen a lot of waste in project delivery, and I've seen it done well as badly. And yeah, we aim with Sharktower to use data to do it better.
Brilliant. And this session today, it really is a deeper dive, and it's less about us presenting to you and more about you asking the questions you want to ask. So we can take this where you need to go, because this is pretty new to a lot of people, and we've seen that this is a very popular topic. If I go to the next slide, please. Then if you remember when you registered, there was that one question on the registration form that said, what was the one thing that most excites you or scares you about the rise of AI in project management? And if I reflect back on the first webinar, which was a great webinar, and if you haven't attended, if you didn't attend that one, I think most of you have, but if you didn't attend that one, then let me know, and I will I'll send you the link to the recording of that previous webinar, because it gives you a lot of the background. But we ran some interactive sessions, if you remember, and at the point of the contribution to those sort of Menti polls that we were running, 20% of the participants that first webinar said they were already using AI technology in some way, mainly in integration, automation, chatbot assistance, that sort of thing. When we asked the question around who else would, what areas would be most helpful to you, the top 3 areas you came up with were scheduling, resource planning, and risk and issue management were the things that was the people of that first webinar talked about. And then we judged this kind of how this feeling. How did you feel, or how do the attendees feel about AI? I mean, we kind of, it's the whole joke around, is it the kind of Terminator situation? Does it terrify you? Do you think that you're not going to have a job, or project managers aren't going to have a job in a few years' time? What was quite interesting was at the beginning of that webinar, 60% of the attendants said they were excited about the possibility of what AI could do to bring to project management. And by the end of the webinar, we'd risen that to 76%. I mean, hopefully at the end of this one, we're going to hit, close to 100%. Everybody's going to be convinced. I'm sure Craig and Lindsay are going to do a great job of convincing you. 23% were kind of cautious at the beginning of that last webinar. That ended up only 12% were cautious, and 9% were just concerned. And I guess concern comes from an area of perhaps not understanding everything. It's kind of the way things work. So for the next slide, please, because you did give some great quotes, and just a few of the things you said. You felt that AI focusing on real value versus mundane tasks. So the elevation, I think, of project management activities, by moving away from these kind of mundane tasks and elevating the focus of effort, would provide greater value, real value. That was one thought. Removing the non-value repetitive work, which is kind of talking to the same thing, perhaps. It's all about that kind of removing those kind of mundane tasks, stuff that has to be done. It's not that you can't do them, but actually they don't provide the high value, the high return of your personal investment of time. And then understand the skills project managers will need to remain relevant in the future. It was kind of a running theme. Being able to focus on people in projects, I think that's critical. And you're going to hear me talk about that at the end as I wrap the proceedings up today. Some real interest in the predictive power of AI, sort of recognizing this is perhaps one of the big things here. It is that predictive capability. And finally, helping project managers concentrate on value delivery was also felt to be really, really important. So excellent. Next slide, please. If I sum this up, I think I can sum it up in this way, is the fact that the vast majority of people are excited about AI in project management. And they're excited for two reasons. They're either excited because of the removal of the mundane, the tedious, the repetitive, the low value, or they're excited about the art of the possible. And by what beyond what we know and beyond what we expect and beyond what we kind of have historical understanding, what else could AI do for us? Excites people a great deal. And perhaps the excitement is a combination of those two things. As a couple of the previous quotes said, it is the removal of the mundane and the freeing up of project managers to do really exciting things and greater success. And most people, the vast majority of people, if they weren't excited, they were at least intrigued. They were intrigued about what the art of the possible, or the AI of the possible is in the future. And what you fundamentally told us after the first webinar was, you want to know more. We're here because you need and you want to know more about what is actually out there right now and what is possible moving forward. And next slide, please. The evolution of AI in project management, how you take advantage of this in your business and your projects. We talked about this. This is some imagery and some words based on the PwC report from 2018. AI will transform project management. Are you ready? Which is an interesting read. But a quick recap. We looked at the components of AI, because AI is not just a simple thing. It's not a one lump thing. It can be broken down into a number of components or levels. And we got the three of them up here. I mean, the first level is kind of integration and automation and chatbot assistance. So, integration automation is like all about project planning, enabled scheduling. It means like programmed logic and rules, automatically tracking the progress and status are performed by project team members and alerting the project manager when there are some sort of deviations or kind of on an exception basis scenario. And chatbot systems are there to kind of act literally as your kind of digital, project assistants. Bots will take a role in human-computer interactions, mainly based on speech or text recognition. They will take over the menial tasks. Remember the mundane. They'll take over those menial tasks, such as organizing meetings, reporting on plan versus progress checks, reminding project team members of scheduled activities, and so forth. That's the kind of low-level, entry level. Still really valuable stuff, as we'll see shortly, as Craig and Lindsay will take you through. The next level is the kind of machine learning based project management. This is kind of the phase where it's all about project management inducing this kind of machine learning, which enables these kind of predictive analytics and can provide advice for project manager this way. This is sort of predictive AI. And finally, there's the autonomous project management. Similar to, I guess the thing that we all know is, the kind of self-driving cars. Autonomous project management would only need limited input and intervention from a human project manager. Currently, there are no real-life use cases supporting this at this point in time, but it's something that is definitely on the horizon. So from webinar 1, we discussed the what and we discussed the why. As I said, if you didn't attend that one, then I'm more than happy to get you the link to listen to that recording. But this one is really going to show you the how. I think we thought that was really important to get down into the how. So welcome to the kind of deeper dive into the world of project management and AI. And at that point, Craig, I'm going to hand over to you and then on to Lindsay after that to take us on this journey from integration, automation, chatbots, machine learning, and autonomous project management.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter.
My pleasure.
So yeah, just to give a bit of context. So actually on these three levels, I'm going to start and talk a little bit about integrating automation. And I'm going to actually hopefully, show you a little bit how you can do this today, or describe it and actually tell you where you can go and get the tools to do it. Then actually Lindsay's going to spend a good bit of time talking about what we actually try to do in Sharktower in terms of what can we do today with machine learning to try and help project managers spot problems, help assure them with machine learning-based project management. And then I'll bookend it with, let's talk about the real big challenge. Actually, building autonomous self-driving cars is easier than building an autonomous project. And I might describe a little bit of that, but also start where you can start applying some things to start being able to do more probability and prediction. Hopefully, you'll have takeaways from everything we give today as well that you can actually go and investigate and a bit more into the how to go and start making this step change. So, first of all, removing the non-value repetitive tasks. I was happy to see so many people in the sort of initial feedbacks, highlight we want to focus on real value. Our jobs are to be project delivery leads. We're here to deliver value and outcomes. But actually, the majority of our project management role is a mundane task. It is taking up 30 to 50% of our time, chasing information, copy and pasting data, trying to get status reports, trying to find out what's going on. So, one of the first steps of evolution, how we can really start applying, not always AI, but actually automation, is in things such as robotic process automation. So you may be aware of implementing RPA solutions in your organizations for customer service, or you phoned NHS 24 and had an automated response that is used chatbots, or you've done a website query and a chatbot has responded to your asks or search queries. Ultimately, these are rule-based systems, and there's two levels of them. First is basic RPA stuff, which actually is just learning from what you do, and you can either. I'll just put someone on mute. Apologies about that. So you can either preload the system and actually create simple rules-based automation of repetitive tasks that you say, if this, do that. You actually also get ones that will monitor, unattended ones that will learn, that will actually watch what you do, and then the next time you do it, suggest, do you want to do this task again? You do it several times, and that's really good for that scraping data, capturing next actions, copying and pasting, moving stuff around, which as project managers we spend a lot of time doing. Where you can start to then go a bit further is when you actually apply AI to that actually starts to say, okay, as well as doing that, I can actually start to understand the context of documents. I can classify emails automatically for you. I can look at a bunch of unstructured data and try and clean it up. Or I can process speech queries and just ask for help. And I can then assume that this is what you want, and I can work it out and then play back. So, Alexa skills, for example. So then we start to go a bit vast. So one of the things we always get asked about with Sharktower is, what are your integrations? What do you do? And actually, we've got some standard out the box stuff for Jira, but we actually don't focus a lot on this because, and one of the things I hope you take away today is, you have most of these tools available to you quite readily. So where you can start working in automation, tools like UiPath Assistant, or UiPath's got a whole tool set of stuff where you can create rules-based automation across multiple applications. You don't have to rely on one single vendor and be fixed by what they allow you to integrate. Or Zapier is a great, really simple to use tool. The free version is excellent. The paid version is not that expensive. And again, it allows you to create lots of triggers from one system to another, define an action. Apologies, I knew that was going to happen as people came home. You can define an action and then trigger another action. So for example, quite often, I work with PMOs who are really trying to get lots of controls into systems. They want their project management platforms, platforms to have lots of controls to make sure people input quality information or don't break things. But that has a counter action where people don't input information to the system. It's not collaborative. You don't get real-time updates. So instead of creating controls in the system that actually keep systems open, transparent, but actually create lots of alerts, so that when actually someone does change something that you want to know about, you'll have a trigger so you can go and check. Or when someone tries to take an action or input poor quality data into a form, actually, use RPA to sort that for them, or suggest how to sort it for them as well. So one of the things I would always say to go and start is actually go look at what's available in your own organization as well. So if you're a Microsoft house, you're going to have Power Apps in your organization. You might not be switched on yet by IT, but go and ask them. So that's got Power Automate that used to be called Flow. Power Apps, so you can actually go and create your own apps and send them out through the organization, and obviously Power BI for creating integrated reporting. A lot of those tools are really intuitive, rules-based stuff where you can actually create automation across your entire suite of project reporting, status reporting, information gathering, or triggers and actions. What I would obviously caution is watch out for making bad decisions faster. So this is a typical landscape that we see in organizations. We see on the right-hand side, every team work in different ways, whether it's Excel spreadsheets, some people using plans on a page in PowerPoint or Visio or Miro, the market team sitting in Rike or Salesforce, individual teams creating actions in Trello, Slack, Teams, whatever. Project manager trying to get a view of that in Smartsheet, MS Project, developers in Jira, and then actually trying to create board packs or gather that information to even put it in an enterprise PPM tool like your PlanView or anything. So this is a huge problem in project management because it takes up loads and loads of our time to try and gather this data. When we do, the information's pretty unconnected. It's subjective. It's out of date. It's not really aligned. And more often than not, actually, a lot of it's just reporting against governance frameworks or contractual milestones or contracts, the original estimates. So definitely go and start automating. You'll get loads and loads of benefit from your manual tasks, but be careful that actually what you don't do is just automate bad processes and poor data. And that's one of the things that we try to tackle with Sharktower is actually how can we have a more collaborative shared view of true delivery and actually trying to assure the quality of that so that then when we do create automations for information flow and data flows and processes, again, it's based on good, robust data. I'll pass over to Lindsay, who will talk more about actually what we are doing at Sharktower in machine learning based project management.
Thank you. So hopefully you can all see that. As Craig said, I'll talk about how we actually do this, the kind of augmented version of what he's just spoken about, so machine learning based project management. So really what we try to do with Sharktower is by having all of your project data in one place, firstly, that saves a lot of time in terms of creating manual reports and so on, but actually, secondly, that can then be used. So how can we use that data to augment our users' understanding of what's going on the project, essentially? So we have 3 models, and we use those to provide indicators to our users. So we have a sentiment analysis model, which looks at the mood of the team and the trend of that over time. A project health scoring model, which is essentially an objective complement to the RAG status, and a project slippage prediction. So this looks at the plan data that we have in Sharktower. So all of those run on all of the data that we have in Sharktower about the projects that we have on there. So that's everything from your plan, the underlying scope beneath that, so the low level kind of tasks, the stories that are being developed, meeting actions, decisions that are being taken across the project, risks, issues, OKRs, so all of that, and then all of the commentary that goes alongside that, so the kind of conversation, if you will, that goes on against each of those objects. So that's the data that we capture, and then these models will use that to provide indicators to our users. Another thing that sort of sits on top of that is the explainability side of things. So it's really important, rather than just telling our users a generic score that they don't then know what to do with, that we can provide reasoning behind the score so that people can kind of make informed decisions about actions. So we have the kind of key influences for each score also displayed as well. So without further ado, I will jump into Sharktower now. So this is the sort of project highlight report. So you've got here what you probably expect to see, fairly kind of standard fields, the key outcomes on the project, the description, the RAG status and RAG narrative, and some kind of summaries of what's gone on in terms of recent completed work, upcoming work, overdue work. Now that's all the data that kind of sits underneath the models and feeds them. So the team sentiment model, I will start with that one. So this, essentially, we used to have a manual version of this where we would ask users, how are you feeling about the project? Do you still believe in the project? Do you think the project is going to be a success? Do you feel stretched in your role day to day? And it really became clear that that information was so important to understanding the likelihood of success of a project. So even with that manual version, we were able to spot patterns and take interventions, which really fundamentally made a difference to the project. So we took it the next step and built the current model, which is a natural language processing model. So really what we're trying to do is replicate the world that we maybe used to live in a long time ago, where project teams were a lot smaller. You'd maybe be sat in the same room as everyone. You'd understand how everyone was feeling. Stakeholders would have a pretty clear view of what was going on because they'd be in the same room as well. These days, even remote working and working from home aside, we typically have really disparate project teams. We're borrowing people from BAU. We've got people kind of in different countries all over the world, and stakeholders usually have so many projects that they're interested in. How can they possibly be close to every single person that's working on any of those projects? And ultimately, it's these people, the people that are delivering the project, who really know what's going on. So they're the people that you want a bit of a heads up if they're burnt out, if they're not engaged anymore, if they don't believe that the project is even being run in the right way or done in the right order. You want that insight. So we're trying to provide that through using the data that's in Sharktower. So essentially all of the free text fields in Sharktower, so your RAG narrative, your commentary, every single object in Sharktower can have a commentary associated with it. So I'll just show an example. You can have, there's tagging and comments, and that really kind of encourages a conversation between people on the project, and we can start to use that data to identify trends. And really that's what we're looking for with this. So it's not going to give you all the answers. It's designed to be an indicator. You want to look for probably a downward trend, although you might want to also look for upward trends as well, general changes in behavior. So sometimes you might say, well, I know why that's happening. So if there was a downward trend earlier at the beginning of this year, you would say, well, that's when we went into lockdown, everyone was getting used to a different way of working. So of course there was a downward trend. I can explain that away. I don't really need to probe any further. But in a scenario where actually you see a big dip in that sentiment and you don't know why, you're perhaps a stakeholder that's really far removed, then, well, maybe you want to probe into that a little bit further. And that's where these influences come in. So for each of the models for the current score, you get a list of key influences to that current score. That just basically points you in the right direction of where you might want to start looking into it. So really what we're trying to do with these is help narrow down where you might want to focus. So as a stakeholder, maybe you want to go after, rather than the red project, you drill down into that, and actually that all seems in hand from what you can see going on in Sharktower, but actually what's happening with this green project over here, which has a steadily decreasing team sentiment score, project health score. Maybe I'm going to go and probe a bit further into that one first. I'm going to fight that fire before I fight the other one. And yeah, just kind of augment your understanding of what's going on the project. Now, the second model that we have is our project health score. So this, as I said, is the objective complement to the RAG status. So we generally find RAG reporting is a bit laggy. Maybe I'm not going to report my project as red until I know how to get it back to green. Or, maybe I don't even realize that it's red as the project manager. So obviously, there's always going to be things, and Craig will talk about this a bit more later, there's going to be things that Sharktower doesn't know about that are going on in the world or in the organization that the RAG status, manually set and reported on by the project manager will add value and color to that story. But, we might as well use the data in Sharktower to provide this score as well. So this looks at the sort of underlying data. So all of that scope data I mentioned, the plan, the kind of risks, issues, tasks, stories, the movement of those. So are we getting slower at completing work? Is there a lot of slippage in the plan? Are there a lot of people that are blocked in what they're supposed to be doing? And pulls that all together to provide this objective score. And as with the sentiment score, you want to look for a trend. So you may see that it's fairly steady all the time, and maybe you don't need to take any action, but as soon as you might start seeing that dip downwards, that's when you might want to come, understand a bit more, look at the key areas, the key influences for this particular project, and again, see whether there's something to be done in terms of, do we need to speed up, does this project need more resource, do we need to get some more experts to unblock people on the project? So how can we help this project given that downward trend? We also look at the organizational average. So this gives each project and anyone looking at this score a bit of an idea of where that project compares to within the organization. And in future, what we want to be able to do is really cluster similar projects together. So that that kind of comparison to everyone else really means something. If we can get these projects we're all compliance projects, all in the same industry or anything like that, how can we kind of make that comparison even more meaningful and even more helpful? So that's the project health score. And then
Lindsay, can I just interject to that point? Because a question came through from Cardigan. I think that's how I pronounce your name, sir. It's Lindsay, great idea at looking at team insights. What's the period you need to get to model to learn from an average team size of, say, 20 people? The kind of team insights, team sentiment. What is that kind of period of time from your experience?
So the existing model is sort of trained to basically look at how we'd expect people to be talking on a project. So it can immediately give you a bit of insight into how it's behaving currently. I'd say probably a few weeks worth of data to actually get used to that particular team. So yes, absolutely, it needs to normalize a bit. Perhaps you have a naturally very negative team, so you might see it kind of dip a little bit at the start because it's maybe not the same level of upbeatness that it's been trained on, but then you're going to see that dip normalize, and then once that's kind of peter down and normalize, then that's when you might start seeing more meaningful trends. So I'd say, yeah, probably a few weeks worth to kind of get accustomed to that.
Okay, brilliant. A kind of follow-up question from me, if I may. I'm intrigued. So, when we've gone through this kind of disruptive periods that we've gone through, I guess this is a great tool to be able to track that kind of team sentiment if they're suddenly, exploded into a completely remote world compared to the original sort of world they've been working on. So again, I guess that's a great tool to give you some insights there.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course, we see a downward trend in the teams at the beginning of this year because we could all feel that in the moods that in the teams that we were working in anyway. So yeah, absolutely, it's kind of either backs up what you already know or can add that extra bit of insight into what you perhaps don't know in terms of how people are feeling if they're remote and further removed from you.
Brilliant. All right, thank you, Craig. A couple of questions for you, but I'll come back to you with those at the end. Lindsay, carry on. Thanks.
Thank you. So the third model is our project slippage model. So this is where it can get really complicated. So as I said, Craig will talk more about this, but we take our plan data. So as I said, we have a plan in Sharktower, which is essentially a bit of a I'll show you quickly. It's a bit of a sort of tube map of nodes and edges. So it's a dependency-based plan. It is designed to depict the dependencies between different teams. So if you've got a lot of different teams, work streams, let's say, all interconnected, all dependent on each other, all working together, how does that fit in? When do they meet? And what are those kind of coincidence points, and what are the key milestones? So this is our view of the plan. And what we do is essentially run Monte Carlo simulations to look at when we think that project might finish. So based on the plan data that we've got, the amount of slippage that's there already, the amount of sort of areas of high and low confidence. So if I've got an activity, a piece of work that I need to do that I've done a very similar thing 100 times before, I've actually done it with the same team, I know it's definitely going to take me 4 weeks, then I might put put that in for 4 weeks in my plan and mark that as high confidence. However, elsewhere, I might be saying, you know what, I've never done anything like this before, completely greenfield, different. I've never worked with these people before. I'm going to put it in for 6 weeks, and that's got a bit of contingency, but I'm not that confident. So I can put in those confidence levels as well, and that also feeds this model. So based on the kind of the network of nodes and edges in the plan, the existing slippage in the model, and these areas of high and low confidence, we can use that to run simulations on this project and say when we think it's going to end. And then basically we give once we get to a 90% of the simulated projects were complete on X date, that's the date that we'll provide in the model. And then again, we've got the kind of areas of influence in that. So what are the areas that you might want to delve into in the plan? And again, you can drill down and learn more in terms of that. But obviously that is only being fed by the plan that's in Sharktower. It can't possibly know about all of the, the things that are going on in the world, in the organization, that are obviously going to have an effect on the project as well. And that's where we kind of get to the future. Ideally, what we want is for these models to be able to say, I've seen something very similar before. I've got loads of external data sources. I know exactly what's going on in the world, and I can tell you the next best action you should take, and that will be the exact fix to the problem. But we're quite a way off that. So that was the sort of autonomous project world, which Craig is going to talk to you about now.
So before we move on, thank you, Lindsay. So there was a follow-up. Well, there's a question from Girish, Lindsay, for you. Would teams, in your experience, change their behaviours in a positive or negative way once they see or know that a tool is predicting their sentiments? Do you think?
So, I mean, we definitely have seen. Let's say a team is already not in a great way. Everyone's pretty overworked and stretched, and they know that it's being monitored. Probably use a bit more, even more negative language, just almost to like get the attention of stakeholders who are looking at it. And to be honest, I don't think that's not a bad thing in terms of it will ultimately the mood will get uncovered. Yes, it might get a bit exaggerated because people are trying to fool it, but actually that almost, I have seen this, did work in the end because it got people's attention. So yes, people ultimately, of course, are going to behave differently if they know they're being monitored. But I don't think you'll ever get a false impression. I don't think most humans on projects are going to go, oh, I'm going to pretend I'm really happy even though I'm not, or vice versa. I think you'll usually just get perhaps an exaggerated version of the truth.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that is we're very careful how we share the data. So in the front end, we're only showing work that's causing it, because it's not about people performance, it's about work, and make it so if you fix the work, people will follow generally. So that's one thing to be careful. So actually, it's about the work, and as Lindsay said, the team will form around their sentiment. What they want people to know is this is how we feel. So when it's actually surfaced transparently without them having to do it, without subjectivity and bias, they feel more empowered, and actually it drives the right behaviours. If people go and try and fix the work, then people go, oh, thank God you took that bit of work off us because we're overloaded, etc. So, but we are very clear not to show that this person's causing that effect. It's the work.
All right, perfect. And before you get going again, Craig, I mean, I'm going to go back to the question from earlier on.
Yeah, there's good questions.
The comment was great point on having too many tools all over the place and struggling to get it consolidated and meaningful. But what do you suggest when organisations have the portfolio of projects that are hybrid and hence kind of forced to use different tools platforms? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think this is half the challenge, and it's one of the biggest challenges we've had to overcome with Sharktower is the fact that methodologies and ways of working force people into silos. So one of the things we try to overcome all the time is how do we get collaborative planning that actually works end to end, regardless of how you work. So you get right fit methodology. So as Lindsay showed you, that delivery plan is our way of planning projects. It's a dependency-based plan that doesn't care if you're waterfall or agile. All those bits of work breakdown, those activities could be a waterfall activity or it could be a sprint. It knows you've got stories or tasks in it. So trying to have a platform that, interestingly, Sharktower is a little bit more flexible and more open than other platforms, but actually it gives you more structure and insights because we can do assurance on that data because we get better data because we get people together. So it's not an easy challenge, and it's one of the things that we overcome, and that's our way of trying to say, well, we need to get people onto the same view, and if they can draw their project plan better on PowerPoint or Visio or on a whiteboard, well, why are we not using that thing to structure work underneath and then let people put the real work? So what we've found is actually it drives a lot better understanding of real delivery, and we actually get a better view of how work is actually flowing with that. So that's one of the things we've tried to overcome. And I think one of the key aspects of this is, at the heart of it is people and collaboration and data visualization, data storytelling. All those things are really, really key to get better quality data so we can actually do smart stuff with it, which I'll talk about. So it's a really good question.
Okay. And one last question before you move on to autonomous project management is a question around how much data entry is needed to make plans and algorithms work. You're saying how much you have to put in to get value out, I guess.
I think I'll touch on that one and when I do my bit. Actually, I'll touch on that one in a minute, as well as the first question, which talked about how far can we get in terms of the autonomous project, because it's the biggest challenge on that. So they're really good questions. I'll definitely touch on that one. And then there's actually a whole bunch of good other questions coming on that we'll pick up as we go.
Okay, cool.
So let me share my screen. So as you are alluding to, it is a challenge. So our vision is to build the autonomous project. Now it's not going to be a fully autonomous project. That's not ever going to be the case. It's a thing that humans collaborate around, put data in to say this is the work we're doing towards an outcome. That's what project is, right? It's a team, focused around delivering an outcome, and how best can we capture the data. So it's always going to be reliant on humans inputting data. So that's the first thing to get over, and that's a behavioural psychology. It's a psychology challenge to get people to put the right data and trusted data, make it open and transparent. But we want people to navigate humans on the optimal route to that outcome. So do the stuff that's really hard. Do the processing of the big complex project and scenario modeling. It does require a huge amount of data to do that robustly and accurately, but actually be able to do it predictably, or to do it with indicators and insights, as Lindsay suggested, actually we can start doing that. So hopefully I'll give you a flavour of that just now. So why is this bloody hard? Because projects are complex systems of multiple influencing factors, stakeholders, and even the smallest project is an endless network of cause and effect impacts. Right, this is my big sexy slide. It's really bad. It's the worst slide I've ever done. But just to deliver an outcome. So outcome delivery is reliant on business performance. So actually, do I have the money? Do I have the resources? Is the business operating well? That's going to affect how you can deliver outcomes. Ultimately, relying on people performance. Are people engaged? Do I have the capability, the skills? It's relying on your supply chain. So whether you're working with a software vendor or an IT services firm to build something for you, or you're working in construction and you've got multiple vendors from construction to plumbers to suppliers of steel, it's going to be reliant on that. Outcome delivery is also reliant on a bit of certainty and knowledge. Do I know what the hell I'm trying to deliver? And actually, we tackle, where we really focus Sharktower is actually on a lot of technology, digital transformation, people, organizational change. That's where we focus. We're not actually looking at the sort of complex construction projects that are quite well defined in terms of dependency. So we actually try to deal with the most ambiguous change, which is that organizational change, the stuff you do, obviously, transformational stuff. And that's actually quite unknown now. It's really ambiguous because we're doing stuff for the first time. We're having to be pivotal fast. We're having to be innovative. So your innovation is pretty uncertain knowledge. So obviously, supply chain is affected by cost of goods. Business performance is affected by consumer behavior. Markets affect consumer behavior and cost of goods and business performance. Social economics will affect the well-being and the performance of your people. It will also affect the markets. Environment will affect supply chain. It will also affect your people performance if there's flooding in the local area or the house has been damaged so they can't get to work. Politics, internal politics and global politics will affect how people behave. It will also affect the markets. I got bored drawing arrows, but all of these things affect everything. So even as simple as a project, how you people turn up for work are affected by how they feel, by the political environment, social environment, their well-being. How well they can deliver work is based on their knowledge, the skills, the capabilities. Supply chain is affected by almost everything. So every single project you work on is absolutely 100% at risk from the minute you start it. And if it wasn't, it would be business as usual work. And to be able to model all that to any degree of certainty is really, really bloody hard and needs lots and lots of data. There's a big problem because while we've got decades and decades of delivering projects and learning all the time, we throw it all away. We don't capture it. You hire consultants to say, we've done this 100 times before, we've done this ERP system, but they turn up with a PowerPoint deck and a whiteboard, and they haven't captured data. Even the data we did capture for projects was pretty subjective, pretty limited. It was mainly looked like the governance framework, the reporting. We admit it, as project managers, we all report the bare minimum. Our suppliers tell us a bunch of lies because they're protecting the statement of works. Our internal team hold things back because they're scared they'll get hit with a stick if they don't deliver. So we don't ever really have a true view of delivery. Certainly not what was actually done and how well it was actually delivered, and completion rates. So it's really hard then to apply analytics to that, even to do basic trends, because we've got a false baseline. It's really potentially dangerous to apply AI to that monitored and uncontrolled, because it's going to learn from all the bad information and bad practices. And also the world's changing so fast, it's really hard to build it on previous models, because actually, we don't work like we did 5 years ago. We don't work like we now no longer work like we worked 5 months ago at the beginning of lockdown. We're changing that fast that it's very hard to train models on the way we delivered, the way we estimated the performance in the past. So that's a big challenge. So we may as well stop talking about autonomous projects and pack our bags. So to the first question, how close are we to the autonomous project? It is easier to build a self-driving car than it is to create the autonomous project, especially because everything on the left-hand side of this are all based on behaviors. And that's really, really hard to model political, human, social behaviors and everything else. So what can we do? This is quite a busy slide of words. There is possibility. There's stuff we can do. We can apply levels of machine learning to existing data and in-flight data, but we have to be careful how we train that and how we filter it and how we weight it as well, to be very careful. So as Lindsay talked about, in Sharktower, our project slippage model is looking at that network effect, but it needs input to know what's the certainty level or confidence level, what's the risk level of those things, as well as the estimate of time. And it will learn over time as well. And then it's going to do thousands of simulations using Monte Carlo simulations and looking at different distributions to see how best can we predict potential slippage. But even that's not going to be robust because the data set isn't enough and historic data is pretty poor. So hence why we always, sell it as an indicator. It just tells you where to go. Like, we want people to try and plan better. So we know you can't plan the whole thing. You can't plan 12 months of certainty. We've just said that everything's ambiguous and changing all the time. So we use models like this to say, okay, this is what we think is having an effect, the biggest effect on your potential slippage. And if you jump into that, do deep dive, plan that better, then you're going to increase your probability of success, and keep doing that and doing that. So we're trying to give focus because we know it can't be robust. So on the top right there, you're seeing lots of different factors that go into us trying to create, the things from the network effect dependency, the risk modeling, the weighting, and that gives us some indication this might slip. We used to just show that graph, the potential slippage, but that was useless because project managers couldn't do with it. So as Lindsay said, we spent a lot of time then working on explainability. What in that network of activities and dependencies is having the biggest effect, so you can go focus on where to plan better. Obviously, again, one of the things to talk about is historical data is heavily biased and subjective. So we didn't remove the human element of all the reporting. And over time, we can do that if we start recording now, but it's going to require a lot of feedback loops as well. So one of the things that we are continually evolving, need to evolve better with Sharktower as well, is every time someone does something, especially a completion, we get feedback. So did this actually complete when you've just recorded its close? What was the actual time? How successful was it? Almost capture real-time lessons learned. And those things can be used to train the models better over time. So there's still a huge amount of feedback we need when we're working with these models. So it's not easy. And it needs lots and lots of data, which we don't have, but we have to start from somewhere. One of the places you can start, so even for yourself, is I'll point you to another free giveaway. It's nothing to do with us, but go look at RiskAmp. There's a free version, and there's actually a really cheap version to buy, and it's an Excel plugin, and it's got a couple of models. It's got a couple of things based on R that you can do sensitivity analysis. It's got Monte Carlo simulation in there, and it can take your basic work breakdown structure, and it basically moves you on from PERT analysis. So for those of us that used to do pattern analysis, that what's our lowest possible estimate, what's our IS estimate, what's our expected, and then what's our risk of variability. You know, actually with Monte Carlo simulation, we can be doing random variations with thousands of simulations, as Lindsay said, that's what we do in Sharktower, and that can give you, you know, that probability of cover what might occur. That gives you a much better focused idea of probability than you can possibly calculate yourself. So you can use these tools on your current plans and estimates and schedules today to do probability and sensitivity analysis. Again, that'll tell you where to focus. Actually, that's the thing that's potentially could have the biggest impact on a plan. So think of it as you know, critical path analysis, but with a little bit more, you know, intelligence and just time mapping and doing it. But you got to caveat again, it's only as robust as experts giving it estimates. If you can also gather enough historical data, you can start to use that historical data and estimates to allow the machine learning model to create the estimates in the first place, which would be even better. Because but that again will take lots and lots and lots and lots of years of data. We just don't have good enough data in the past to do it, but we can start capturing it now. So hopefully, yes, it's really, really hard, but actually you can learn really, really fast from the data you've got now in the models, and you can learn in live delivery. And you know, that's what we focus on in Sharktower. Over time, those models will just get more and more robust to the point where you can simulate every variant that says, okay, an impact's happened, so I can now tell you the best route out of that. And that's what we're working on with Sharktower. But obviously, we're not waiting till that's possible. We're starting by showing people indicators of where to look to now so that humans can intervene and do their analysis as well. But please do go look at Risk Amp. It's got some good blogs. Download it, play with it. It's a really good way to start to understand how these models work, and it's quite intuitive as well. So that's my last takeaway for you. Hopefully that was insightful. Peter, over to you and more questions, I suppose.
Yeah. If I go on to the next slide, I'll just cover up my couple of slides, and then we're going to come back. There's some good questions in there. So yeah, let me just open my video as well. Yeah, so by 2030, this was a report that suggested, Gartner suggested that 80% of the work of today's project management discipline will be eliminated, which is a scary word, eliminated. Not quite exterminated, but eliminated anyway, as AI takes over the traditional PM functions. We talked right at the beginning about the excitement about the possible and the removal of the mundane. We've seen some more detail on that. So if this is the case, if this is what's coming, if I can have the next slide, please. You know, just reflect on this. This is I look at it. You know, at the end of a successful project, have you ever heard the project sponsor or the project manager thanking the project tools? No. Have they ever thanked the methodology? Definitely not. The reporting process or the escalation path or anything else? No, they don't. They don't thank anybody except for the people. And at the heart of all of this, I feel, is the freeing up of project managers. We started with kind of the question around, well, what are project managers going to be doing in the AI empowered world? They will be doing stuff around people. And Greg, you talked about the challenge of that kind of emotional part of the people difficulty. I mean, I know someone made the comment about the autonomous cars still having problems, but I think we recognize that if the world was just autonomous driving vehicles dealing with other autonomous driving vehicles, we'd be there. It would not be a problem. The problem autonomous vehicles have is the interaction with people driving other non-autonomous cars, people walking around, cycling, driving, etc., and being generally in the way. And so my view is that this AI-empowered future is going to allow project managers to focus on people, and that is what's going to bring them greater success in the future. I see this all as a kind of an enabler, if you like. So yeah, let's go on to the questions here, because I know quite a few have come in. So if we have the next slide up, it should be the question slide, I think. But there we go. And let's see what we've got. Let's see where we are. Right, so we have a question about, oh yes, this is an interesting one. So Lindsay, this one's for you. Could team sentiment be extended to customers? And do you see that as a different case? So in the world of client-facing projects, if it were, can you take that kind of sentiment from the client and the internal project team and come up with something?
Absolutely. So we have one of the things that we try to do with Sharktower is make sure that everyone on the project is an active user, understands that Sharktower is the source of the truth of the project, and sees Sharktower as the kind of central anchor that has all of the information about the project. So when we have those examples where you've got client-facing projects, effectively that's still, yes, there's an internal team and a client team, but really that's one team trying to deliver one particular outcome on a project. So they are one team, and I would expect all of them to be users on Sharktower, all working together, collaborating to try and achieve that outcome, because ultimately they want that same end goal. And yes, that is then one single team, and Sharktower sees it as that and looks at them as a team and analyzes the sentiment in terms of all of the data that they're inputting. So yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Craig, for you. I mean, David said, great insights for projects. How will this new information change project managers' behavior? I kind of touched on that. I think it's moving into the people side. Do we see competition for project managers spending more time interpreting data insights from these tools instead of ongoing stakeholder engagement? So perhaps heading in the wrong direction, is that?
Actually, I think that's both. I think it's both the two answers of what actually I see project leaders changing to be. So spending less time managing projects and more time delivering them, right? Delivering outcomes. And I think one of the points, what skills will be relevant for project managers in the future? It is to be an interpreter of data. So not everybody needs to have data skills, like in terms of, you're not going to be a machine learning engineer, you're not going to be a data engineer, you might not even be the automation person, but you will have to understand the data and how to represent that and actually explain it and visualize it. So that is a skill. And actually it's one of the skills that we see becoming really important in PMOs, for example. Because at the moment, they're just regurgitators of data quite often. They just shuffle data, but they don't try to interpret it and explain it and make it explainable and actually influence people through it. And that becomes a strategic advisor role. Because then if you can understand how the project's performing, the ecosystem of the project, the sentiment of the project, and you can explain that to your stakeholders, as Lizzie's point, like the one she talked about, the behavioral change, when that was explained, that the team sentiment goes down, you don't recover from this and you lose the team. That got rid of subjectivity, and the senior stakeholders went, okay, we're giving you more help. So that, I think that, and that's also flip side, you're going to spend more time as that social PM, that people PM. So I think those two go hand in hand, and that's how you become a strategic advisor, to ensure that you're working on the best thing that you can help the business get the best outcomes. So that is becoming an interpreter and articulator of the data, and using that to work with, influence and manage stakeholders and everything else, and be that people person. So I think those two things will come hand in hand.
Okay, brilliant. And I recognize that from the PMO world. It's the fact that you so many PMOs are just, if you like, custodians or managers of the portfolio, but they're not providing true advisory insight to the organization about what's going on. There was another question about, it's kind of about scalability of these tools, these AI tools, and affordability to small organizations. Any thoughts on that?
So I think obviously scalability of something like Sharktower is really, really cheap, and it scales. Like, that's why we have a company-wide license, so people don't have users. I think no, I think in reality, if you look at the bit which is really scalable, is on that automation task stuff, right? That first stuff I showed you, those tools are available. They're becoming commodity tools. You can try them yourself at home on your home laptop. Go and play with Zapier for free. Go and use UiPath. Go play with Microsoft Power. Those are scalable and they're cheap as hell. It just takes a little bit of coordination inside an organization to open them up and to open up the APIs and the data so they can work well. But you'll see how quickly and easily they are to use. So I would say go try them, and you'll see how very, very quickly you can get, maybe not to that 80% that Gartner's say, you'll certainly remove 30% of your manual crap in a week. And that's really scalable. Then the challenge is, how do you scale real AI insights? And that is about getting the data in one place. And it comes to that same challenge. We need people to be on a shared view of what the delivery is. But again, it's becoming a commodity. Being able to scrape data together and apply even that Excel spreadsheet on top of that data, you can do that tomorrow. So I think we're beyond the saying it's not scalable or it's a big transformation. I think we're beyond those challenges.
So the kind of link to that was a question around, this is a specific question about Sharktower, is, what other tools can Sharktower integrate with? Would it pick data from other tools which are being used in the organization? Final thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we do get asked that quite a lot. I think there's variations on the integration and the making use of that data. So to an extent, we want Sharktower to be the source of the truth for most of the data. So the delivery data should be in Sharktower, your plan should be in Sharktower, your task should be in Sharktower, all of that kind of stuff. So I would say we're not going to integrate with like Excel to pull in data from that, read data from there and have a separate data source. Sharktower is the main data source. However, what we could integrate with is something like your benefits tracking system, your HR, your, I don't know, sensitive data aside. So yes, in terms of bringing in extra data sources, that's absolutely something that we would want to do. And then we could, again, start applying those models to that augmented set of data. But generally, we say that Sharktower is the main data source for all of the kind of goings on the project.
Yeah, one of the things areas that we experiment with and are really interested in is that the wider economic and environmental data. So actually, do we understand the weather impacts it has on team performance and morale? Actually, can we use weather data to say, go and reschedule those project meetings because actually someone's going to be, in a traffic jam, and why make the rest of the meeting unproductive because key people are going to block? We know that information, all right? So why don't we use that and reschedule things? So actually doing that, and also, look at economic data. So if we know the economics are changing, we know that the cost of cash is changing, which fundamentally changes business cases. So actually, we can model that immediately. So we look at those types of data sources we can bring in as well.
All right, I can see 3 questions left, so perhaps if we can try and get these in. The first one was around other areas beyond scheduling, risk management, scenario play. So like the example is a convergence of technologies, for example, AI and the Internet of Things in the construction industry, for example. Similarly, cloud and AI, where can this go, I guess?
So very quickly, in construction, you should start looking at AI detection systems for image detection to see if parts are faulty before you actually put them into buildings, scan them as you're going to monitor. Those things are becoming more and more available, and there's lots of solutions for them. You can also, again, look at supply chain traffic stuff to say, actually, I know my shipment's going to be delayed. I used to work in the airport industry, and even the airports don't share when planes take off at the moment. So there is a bit of problem with the data. So you don't know that a plane's going to be late until it comes into your aerospace. It's a real problem for airports. Breaking that sort of barriers down, you've got to do it. But in a supply chain of construction, for example, or manufacturing, you can be monitoring all the way. So AI, image detection, Internet of Things, absolutely. We used to look at the PLCs on belts to know when they need maintenance to improve project maintenance as well, because you can monitor when belts are going to break. So loads of examples of that very quickly.
All right, this could be a long answer. So we don't really have time for a long answer, but Alan said it's been understood for some time now that project success is directly linked to sponsor involvement. Agree. Cheering the team on, moving roadblocks, etc. How can AI help address a situation the sponsor just doesn't care if the project is amber or red? You don't need AI to tell me the project is already in jeopardy if the sponsor isn't proactive.
So my very quick answer is transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Transparency. That's one of the big things in Sharktower is transparency. It's a business tool for everyone. As soon as you create siloed information and status reports that are static that no one can click through, and why you see our delivery path shows true delivery. It doesn't show a plan on a page, a Gantt chart. So it's really important that your stakeholders understand the scale of change and they see it every day. That's how you get them to care. They don't. Of course, they're not going to care about a status report that's static. So it's actually transparency of data visualization, data storytelling. That's what's going to make the difference. It's not AI. AI will not make a difference to that.
Cool. All right. Last question. Are you using deep learning models and neural nets to type models in Sharktower?
Yeah. Yes, that's behind a lot of them. Yeah.
All right. Nice, simple, finished. Thanks, guys. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just wrap things up here. Right, some resources you can go and get, and what we would do after this, we will, it'll give us a day to put it together and get the recording sorted out. But we will get you a summary email that gives you the links to all this kind of stuff. The link to the recording of this session and the previous session. But there's an ebook out there. I'm actually one of the contributors to the ebook. Will AI change the way you manage change? So there's 6 smart people and myself have contributed to this, and you can actually get this one for free as well. And we make sure we get you the way to do that. You can request a trial. Why not? Check out Sharktower in some details. Request a demo, and follow up on the news, etc. Final slide. Lots of resources there. As I said, we'll summarize that. We just want to thank you. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for the back room, Nikki, out there from Sharktower. Thank you for your time today, and hopefully this has taken you where we promised, which is a slightly deeper look into the world of AI and project management. And please go and check out Sharktower. And if you have any questions, come to me, come to Craig, come to Lindsay. We're ready to answer your questions. For now, though, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.